It's easy to watch the news or scroll through social media and feel like there's just no way to change things. But what if there was? What if each of us focused our energy on the things we could actually impact? You might find that you have more power than you think. Welcome back to Participation Trophy, the do-gooder's guide to changing the world, an unscientific podcast where we set out to discover if participation trophies actually drove a generation of greats. I'm your host, Topher Williams. On today's podcast, we are joined by someone who has always thrown their all into what they're doing. His story might start in the smallest of towns, but his journey has taken him a long way. He's a leader, a former Montana state senator, a voting rights activist, and an organizer. Joining us from Washington, D.C., it's Bryce Bennett. Hey, Bryce, thanks for being on the pod.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, Bryce, let's go ahead and just jump right into it. In a couple of minutes, can you just introduce yourself to us and tell us about what you're doing to change the world?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Bryce Bennett. Like you said, I'm an organizer at heart who started in rural eastern Montana and found my way all the way out to Washington, D.C., doing nationwide voter advocacy to make sure that every voice is heard and every vote is counted. I've started in this work very early because I found out since I was in high school that helping people cast their ballots and making sure that their voice was heard in our democracy is truly the great passion of my life. And I had the opportunity from a very early age to, begin with organizing on campuses, got jobs where I was organizing with young people to help them engage in politics and find out, if they really did give a shit about politics in a way that so many people said they didn't. Had some great opportunities to be an advocate for our outdoors, for our public lands, to do the important things that make sure that people had a say when it came to state government when I was elected to the legislature in 2010 and took that ride all the way to a run for Secretary of State in 2020. And then ultimately found this amazing opportunity here at Vote Early Day to bring together thousands of national partners all across the country to ensure that people are casting their ballots ahead of Election Day and avoiding those Election Day obstacles to make sure that nobody's left out when it comes to this vital thing that we call voting.
I mean, that story, that arch is really incredible, right? I mean, to go from just looking at where can I make a difference and just chasing after each thing, I think is really inspiring. I know it's something that inspires me, and I'm sure that it inspires a lot of other people. I am curious, though, if we could take it all the way back to your time in Eastern Montana. Can you tell us what it was like to grow up as a queer kid in Hysham, Montana?
Yeah, Hysham is a town of about 250 people. It's a rural ag town in the eastern part of the state. And, when I was growing up in Hysham, I don't know that I knew that I was a queer kid at that point. I think I, was just like everybody else on the block. And there was only a handful of blocks, that was riding dirt bikes around town or going to the playground or just working my way through school. But, piece by piece, as you get older, you start realizing that you're a little bit different and you start standing out a little bit more and people start noticing that piece by piece, and, even as I went through grade school and later high school, it really became scary and daunting at many different points. I think that everybody who has had an experience growing up gay in a rural state like Montana has had a similar experience. You're not sure if you're going to fit in and you're not sure if that's ever going to change. I mean, I grew up a lot closer to the assassination of Matthew Shepard than marriage equality becoming the law of the land. And that was a lot more of the reality that I grew up with was fear of violence, fear of rejection, fear that, things were never going to work out for me, and often thought that I would never come out of the closet. So, to see where we've come and to see where we've grown as a society, where I've had a chance to grow as a person, over these years has been something that I would have never dreamed possible.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that story. It's especially important to think about, growing up in a rural area in the context of the death of the murder of Matthew Shepard. I mean, I think for any queer kid, right, that has a huge impact on them, especially when you're in a rural area. But you didn't let that stop you, right? I mean, you were first elected to the Montana State Legislature when you were only 25, and you were the first openly gay man to serve in public office in Montana. That's some history-making stuff, Bryce. Can you tell us what made you want to run for office?
Well, to start off with, I never had great ambitions of running for office before I actually did. I had always done work behind the scenes as an organizer, to knock on doors, to do the phone calls, to do the organizing, to try to make change on the issues I really cared about, whether that was voting issues, the issues that matter to young people, environmental issues. The list goes on and on and on of things that I had done just because I wanted to see policy change in Montana for the better. And I feel like, through a lot of the wonderful organizations that I had a chance to be a part of, I was able to see so much of that come to pass. But I got a job in 2009 working for the legislature. And it had been the first time that I'd ever had a chance to see it up close and to actually see the people. And by actually going up there and seeing the process, seeing the intricacies and the people involved doing the important work to make that change, it really helped me realize that that was the place where the biggest change was happening in Montana. It was a place where over 90 days every other year, we were able to pass massive changes that benefited people's lives or could really hurt people's lives if it went the other way. And for me, I walked away from that process going, if I want to create change in the state, like I have been for so many years, even as a young person, this is something I seriously have to consider. And I thought maybe it would be something I did further along in life, but I got home and immediately after the session, the person who represented my district in the state house decided to retire. And I, put my hat in the ring to a very contentious primary and an even more contentious general election that ended with me winning by 155 votes in a very difficult year for Democrats. So it was one that was definitely won by a lot of shoe leather, a lot of knocking doors and talking with people about the issues that matter so closely to them. Because if anything, I was determined. And I knew that if I had a chance to share my case, even as a young person, even as somebody who would be breaking barriers as the first openly gay man, I had a real chance of winning. And I really wanted to take that to the people. And, through their kindness and through their support, I was able to accomplish that in 2010.
Wow. I mean, talk about every vote mattering and counting, right?
Yeah.
150 something votes is literally nothing. I mean, that's like the number of people that live on my block, right? Like that's
yeah.
why. And I live in the suburbs, right? Like that's wild. I mean, in a big city, right? That's half a building, right? I mean, that's wild to think about. And I bet you have some really epic stories as a legislator. I once went to a Montana State Legislature hearing, a committee hearing, and watched some lobbyist for an energy company stand up and talk about how wind turbines are going to give us cancer and was just lying through his teeth, right? So I'm curious, a little off script here, but do you have what's like a wild moment that stands out in your mind from your time in the legislature?
I mean, there's endless amounts of weird things that happen at the legislature. I mean, you see people bring bills that are absolutely wild. I mean, like the one to create a militia was one that I remember popping up my first session where they had these grand designs that we were going to build this pop-up army here in Montana. I mean, people wanted to bring back spear hunting. I mean, on the little bit more like daunting side, as a member of the Judiciary Committee where we get bills about everything under the sun that is a hot topic, whether it is gun issues or abortion or LGBT rights. We saw so many deeply contentious, scary hearings. I mean, ones where we would have members of the public openly threaten our lives. I have never seen members of our security team race into a room as quickly as when a man during an abortion hearing stood up at the podium and said, "I've done just about everything I can for the pro-life movement except for kill one of you all."
Wow.
So you see it all. But despite being the minority and dealing with a lot of strange and weird and often bad things, like, I do want to say that, like, we also saw some amazing things, and truly one of the most incredible things that I ever had a chance to do was participate in passing Medicaid expansion in 2015, I believe it was. I mean, after years and years and years of trying to pass a bill that eventually provided healthcare for 1 in 10 Montanans, 100,000 people getting access to healthcare who hadn't had it before, we were able to get that across the finish line. And the way we all were just in euphoric joy when that finally got its way to the governor's desk, knowing that he would sign it, gave us such tremendous amounts of joy and relief, knowing that even despite the tremendous challenges that we as members of the minority party faced in the legislature, there was incredible opportunities that could come to pass with a lot of hard work and determination and a little bit of luck.
Honestly, that must have been such an incredible feeling. I want to talk about another moment in the legislature that you had. You went viral in 2013 for a speech on the House floor where you urged your coworkers to strike dated and unenforceable language outlawing homosexuality in Montana. What was that experience like?
That was a scary experience. It was one that I wasn't sure I would be up for, to be honest with you. Like, I hadn't originally planned on speaking to that. There was other members of the committee that were going to speak on that issue, but I felt like I couldn't be silent on something that felt so fundamentally close to me. And I was openly elected as the first openly gay man in the legislature. And I think that most people knew that, but I never really said it in anywhere because it just hadn't come up. So to stand up on the House floor and declare openly who I was and why I was there and what this bill meant to me and the people in my community was something that was so incredibly meaningful, but at the same time, like, deeply daunting, because it was so vulnerable to put yourself out there in a way that you knew was going to face opposition. This was not a friendly room to say the very least, even though we were able to get a slim majority of the votes that we needed to get the bill ultimately passed. But I think that every time somebody comes out, it can be a heavy experience. I know certainly for me, even now at the age of 40, if I have to come out to somebody, like, it feels, I get that tight feeling in my gut. But to do that in front of 99 colleagues who were going to pass judgment moments later on you as a human being and the people in your community that you cared so much about was a moment that I will certainly never forget.
Wow. That honestly, that gives me goosebumps. That has to be really a pivotal moment in life. I really can't imagine what that's like, but also you succeeded, right? I mean, and I think that's the other thing that is exciting, right? Like, it's not like you stood up there and did that and took that risk and took that swing and had it crash around you. You guys won, right? And I think that's part of what we want to talk about here on this podcast, right? Is you have to sometimes get up and do scary things and take a big swing. And sometimes it works, but sometimes it it does work, right? Like it both happen. So I do want to shift gears here a little bit. Today, you run an organization called Vote Early Day, and I'd love for you to tell us about that and tell us about why voting early matters.
Well, I'm very happy to talk about Vote Early Day, but just to your last point, like I think like today more than ever, like the need to try is more clear than ever before. Like I was going to say if you have a voice, but we all have a voice.
Yeah.
And we all have something that, I mean, in a world that feels like it's on fire right now, it is insane for anybody to be sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah.
There is something that each and every one of us can and should be doing to move our country forward and find a better path for the awful state of affairs that we are in right now. So I do truly feel like in that moment, I felt like I had to try. And it was not guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination that we were going to pull that off. But if I didn't take that shot, if I didn't share my story, I would have always regretted it, especially if it had gone down that day, knowing that I could have been part of something that changed things for the better in a fundamental way. And just as much as I was able to do that in that moment, everyone has the opportunity to lean in their moment and make sure that they're doing their part by trying. So
yes. Thank you, Bryce. And dear listener, take that advice, right? I mean, shoot your shot, take your swing, step up to the plate and make it happen. Do what you can, right? Lean into your moment. Bryce Bennett, 2025, right? I think that is such an important thing for us to be remembering. I do, however, want you to talk about why voting early is important still, because I think part of the situation we're in today is there's a lot, and we've talked about on other episodes of this podcast, that voting is, one of our other guests said that voting is an opt-in activity in the US. You have to opt into it. And that can create a lot of barriers, especially for young people. And as we talk about trying to make democracy more accessible to more people, voting early is a really big, important part of that. And it's the work that you're doing now. Can you tell us about why that's so important?
Absolutely. Early voting helps ensure that people are not held back by the many obstacles that can come our way by waiting until the last minutes to vote on election day. When you wait until those last minutes, you can run into last minute problems, not having the right ID, various different hurdles, a million things that could go wrong on election day. But by voting early, there's not much that can stop you from sharing your voice. So often we'll hear from people that they went on election day to cast their ballot and they find out that their polling location is now across the city and they won't be able to make it. They find out that they no longer have the right ID that they need and they'll no longer be able to cast their ballot. They run into a million different issues that could stop them from sharing their voices. But by voting early, they are absolutely able to cast their ballots. And, the work that we do at Vote Early Day is really about making it fun and accessible as well. We bring together thousands of nonprofits, businesses, campus groups, influencers, people from all walks of life, not just the people who are in that sort of central civic lane, the people like you and I who are always engaged with politics, always thinking about politics, but people who may not be thinking about politics all the time, but might get some information when they go to their local coffee shop, or might get some information when they turn on a basketball game, or wherever it might be, getting pulled into the civic world by non-traditional partners that are now part of that civic life, and doing things that are fun and engaging for folks, because so often in a world where politics feels, awful, angry, antagonistic, something that's fun and engaging that invites people into our democracy by lowering that barrier for entry goes a long way to making sure that people aren't left out.
Absolutely. I mean, I usually vote early. I feel like I've used all of the tools of voting, right? Like I voted early, I voted on election day, I voted by mail, I voted in person, right? And being able to have that is really helpful. And I actually have shown up to a polling place before and realized that, and I'm a pretty educated voter, and I've shown up to a polling place and realized like that's not technically my polling place. Now, I'm fortunate to live in a state where that's okay and they make accommodation for that. But if you don't live in a municipality or in a state where that is available to you, you might be shit out of luck. I mean, you could be in trouble. I'm curious, Bryce, you've had this incredible journey. I'm wondering at what point along the way you realized that you were a bona fide change maker.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I mean,
maybe it's today. Maybe that's the award we're giving you, the pin, bona fide change maker, Bryce Bennett.
I appreciate it. I mean, I feel like there are moments throughout my career where I've seen change happen, and it's as a humble person, like I'm always hesitant to be like, that was me, I'm the one who did that. But like I have often had the opportunity to be part of amazing teams, amazing collaborations of people that have come together to do amazing things. Whether it's the bills we've been able to pass at the legislature that have changed people's lives, that have made our politics better, that has made voting more accessible, that has made our public lands more accessible and enduring. Whether it's the work that we're doing at Vote Early Day today that brings together thousands of partners that empower millions of voters to cast their ballots ahead of Election Day, or just the work that I used to do when I was first in college of registering people to vote, standing in knee-deep snow, going person by person by person, helping people get signed up so that they could share their voice in our democracy. Like, I guess, piece by piece, like I've had the chance to move the needle, sometimes incrementally, sometimes in a bigger way. But I feel so fortunate that I've had the opportunity to do it with so many amazing people along the way who I certainly would not be a change maker without.
Yeah, that is really humble of you to say, but because I know and listeners know that you really are a change maker. And for those of you who are just listening and not watching this on YouTube, when asked to talk about himself, right, Bryce gets a little red because he really is a sweet, kind person who doesn't like to brag about himself, but that's why we are here to brag about you on your behalf. So if somebody's listening and they want to get started on the journey of becoming a change maker, how do they get started on that? Like, what do they do?
Yeah, I mean, there's any number of paths into becoming a change maker, into creating change. But I always find that the most effective way is to start locally. Like I mentioned before, the first things that I did right out of high school was doing some organizing on campus. I would do voter registration or petition gathering or education or helping groups like the College Democrats grow and thrive and become more effective. All that stuff, was able to create impacts on our campus, and piece by piece as we grew into the community. And that, really allowed me to have opportunities later to do organizing in my city and then organizing around the state. And then now, I have this opportunity to do organizing in every state across the country to help create national change. And I think piece by piece, when you keep showing up, when you keep on proving that you're a determined person that wants to create this change and is willing to learn the skills to do it effectively, you can, grow in the impact and the size of the work that you're doing. But if the work that you always want to do is just in your community, that's good too. For me, like I had this dream of, doing more and more and more when it came to voter access. But if your dream is making sure that you have a stop sign at the corner of your street and you organize and you go to your city council and you make the case for it, that's impactful for you as well. And that's so important that people find those opportunities to engage at a place and a time and a way in a mission that is vital to them.
So takeaway here is that you should look at the places where you can have impact now today, right? We need to get off the sidelines and start having impact today. And then continue to chase that and find those opportunities, and you never know where it's going to take you. I'm so glad you mentioned, I love that you mentioned stop signs, actually. I recently joined my local planning commission, breaking news on this podcast. And we talk a lot about things like stop signs and like, how do we protect wildlife with bird safe windows and like all kinds of fun stuff like that. But all of that is change making too, right? Like change making doesn't need to be unelecting Mitch McConnell, right? Like that is not the only way to make positive change in this world, right? Sometimes most of the time, the best way to make change is in the place that you live and in the people who are around you. I don't know if listeners can hear that, but my cat is having an absolute aneurysm outside this door right now. So hopefully it doesn't come across for all of you who are listening. Okay, we're going to have a little bit of fun now, Bryce. We're going to play my favorite game to play with guests. We're going to ask some rapid fire this or that questions about Montana. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Glacier National Park or Yellowstone National Park?
Glacier by a mile.
By a mile. Climbing a mountain or floating the river?
Floating the river.
I tend to agree, to be honest. State fair or farmer's market?
Ooh. I got to go with the farmer's market. No rides though, so it's a bit of a toss-up.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. But delicious vegetables. We love those. Hunting season or rodeo?
Oh, I love a rodeo. Yeah, I would go to a rodeo whenever I get a chance. They're always a hoot.
Have you ever been to the gay rodeo?
I never have. No.
Okay, well, we have one here in Colorado, so be sure to come down and we'll take a big gay delegation to the gay rodeo.
I can't wait.
Okay, bison burger or huckleberry pie?
Oh, huckleberry pie. Huckleberry anything is very, very high on my list.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go wrong there. Okay, last question. Cabin in the woods or ski lodge?
Oh, man. I mean, why can't I have both? Cabin at the ski lodge. Like, give me that.
I mean that's fair.
I am not a skier. I've skied like twice in my life and I was mid at best. But you know, the lodge vibes are very cute. So it's hard to miss on that. But like a cabin trip with friends is hard to beat.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. The après scene is the way to be, especially if you ever go to Montana at Big Sky. The après scene at Big Sky is unmatched in North America, I think. Sound off in the comments if you disagree, but I'm a big après guy as well. Well, listen, we have all the same here. So clearly, I agreed with you on every single one of those. So I guess we have the same in Montana.
Exactly. We got a nice Montana connection. We're the same sort of Montanan.
That's exactly right.
The type that doesn't live there anymore.
All right. Don't try and embarrass us now, right? Okay, Bryce, we've arrived at the most important question of this podcast. Have you received a participation trophy, and what is it for?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a bunch. The two that stand out to me.
Not a bunch, Bryce. A bunch.
Oh, a bunch. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, especially when it came to sports. Like I think that when I played YMCA soccer when I was in third grade, definitely got a participation trophy or ribbon or something for that. And I think I remember every year at the science fair, I got a participation ribbon. Never smart enough with my science skills to win any of the places, but maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
I'll get that trifold out and we'll do something amazing in my 41st birthday.
Well, listeners should know you're a big kickball star in DC now. So, you know, your athletic career is not over yet.
That's true. I'm an award-winning social media creator.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a great segue into our next question, our final question here, which is where can folks find you to keep in touch, connect, keep the conversation going?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram at Bryce Bennett MT. Would love to connect with people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bryce, for coming on the podcast, for sharing your story with us of your journey from small town to change maker, organizer, state legislator, national voting rights advocate, and activist. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Participation Trophy. I'm your host, Topher Williams. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Participation Trophy Podcast, and follow me on Instagram at @TophMcGof so you don't miss one single thing. Until next time, remember, it's up to us to make the world that we want to see. Bye.